Okay guys, so here we are on my computer, and you can see right now I have opened the Audacity webpage. So you can find this at www.audacityteam.org. As mentioned, this is free open source software that is available for Windows and Mac. So the first step is go ahead and download, install this program, and go ahead and open it. When you open it, it's going to look like this. You come into this window. To demonstrate how to use it, I'm actually going to be showing you with my watch. You can go ahead and increase the hertz here at the bottom. That is basically your sampling rate. So the higher the number, the more sample points it's going to measure in a given amount of time. So go ahead and just maximize that. That's going to give us better accuracy. Next is up here, there's recording volume, as indicated by the microphone symbol. You're going to want to make sure that is all the way up. You can imagine the sensitivity required to measure such a quiet sound from a watch beat. So go ahead and maximize that. Then I'm going to start recording here. You can see this only takes up half the window. Why it does that, I don't know. So I'm going to take this and drag it down so it fills the window. But you can also see the upper and the lower trace are identical, and that's not needed for us. So I'm going to take this middle divider and drag it down. That gives me a nice big window to look at our audio trace. I'm going to hold my watch up to the microphone and we'll see what that looks like. So now you can see those beats nice and clear. So I'm going to start over just to give you an idea of what you want to do without all the talking. You are going to want to, number one, make sure your watch is fully charged. And to do that, if you have a mechanical watch or an automatic watch that has hand wind functionality, go ahead and use your crown to fully wind your watch. If you have an automatic watch without manual wind, you can either shake it back and forth for a while just to fully charge that mainspring, or wear it for 8 hours as you're out and about in advance of this process, just to make sure it's fully wound. And the reason is the charging, it is winding a spring, so it's pulling more and more tension in that spring the more it's charged. A watch is most accurate when that spring is fully wound. As it begins to unwind, the strength gets less and less and the accuracy begins to degrade. So what you don't want is having a watch that's not fully wound. You take the accuracy measurement and you determine it's off by X number of seconds, and you try to adjust for that X number of seconds. But actually, if it was fully wound, you would find it's not off by that much. So you want to make sure your point of reference is correct. So make sure your watch is fully charged to begin with. Next, you're going to want to do this in a perfectly quiet environment. So if you need to hide away in your corner of your house with your doors closed, do whatever you got to do. You can't have any background noise because it's going to affect your data. So you want to make sure you are listening to only the watch noise and you can't have any other noise. So make sure you're in a perfectly quiet environment. So let's go ahead, and this is how I want you guys to do this. You're going to hold the watch up to the microphone. You're going to press the record button. And really what we're trying to do is get 60 seconds, a perfect 60 seconds of usable data. Now, when you first click this button, there's going to be some background noise from your mouse or from moving the watch around on the microphone. So I like to always record for more than 60 seconds. I'm going to tell you 70 seconds just to give you an extra 10 seconds that you can cut away later to make sure you still keep that 60 seconds of usable data. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to record 60 seconds plus of data and show you what we do with that after that time. So here we go. So you can see I'm moving things around, it's making noise, so I need to record for more than that 60 seconds. So let's start from now. Okay, so there we have it. I went out to the 2-minute mark just because I had a lot of talking and a lot of moving around of the watch. So I'm going to want to find a point where we actually get some good usable data and start at that point. So I need to cut away the beginning of this area where I have all the talking. So in order to find good usable data, and you can see, and I'll scroll out to here, you know, it's difficult to really see where these peaks are. So over here you can see if I hover on this y-axis, there's a magnifying glass that shows up. If I left click on this, it zooms in on that data, and it's going to zoom in. If I click it way up here, it's going to zoom in up here. If I click it way down here, it's going to zoom in way down here. So be careful where you click. But if you left zoom into our data in a way that we can see where the actual peaks are. Also, we want to increase the period to get better accuracy and visibility. So up here in the top toolbar, you can see there's a plus and a minus up here. So if you click plus, it's going to increase the period of the data. And that's going to be useful to us when we need to find the very peak of the data, so it's not all crammed together. So I'm at first going to zoom out quite a bit because I had a lot of talking. Sorry guys for all my talking. And I'm going to want to get rid of all this talking that I did up front. So there's a button up here at the top called Time Shift Tool. And I'm going to click that, and that allows me just to drag all this data. And what I'm doing is dragging this data and to cut it off on the front side so you don't see it anymore. So I'm going to drag it until I get some usable data over here somewhere, like so. And you can see that I still have from this area out to my 60-second mark or 1-minute mark. So I have 60 seconds of usable data, which is exactly what I need to check my accuracy. So now that I've done a rough zoom in, I'm going to want to zoom in a little more, and I'm going to want to increase that pitch. So to zoom in the right area, I go back to my selection tool, and I'm going to want to go right to the beginning up here and zoom in on that. So once I click there, I'm going to come back over here to this top toolbar, click zoom in, and that's going to help me zoom in on this area. And you can see I'm starting to zoom in and see the peaks of this data. So this is a perfect point where I would like to use this as my first peak. So I need to align this with perfect 0 to make sure my data is aligned properly. So you can see the peak isn't that tall, so I can click on that and click on this axis here, and that's going to zoom in. That's a little too far, so I'm going to zoom in like that. So that gives me good accuracy on that peak, but it's just a straight line right now. So I need to zoom in the period to expand this out, and that's what this tool does. So you can see it helps me zoom in. This is my peak right here, and I can zoom in as much as I want to make sure I've got an accurate peak, but right there's my peak. So I've done that. What I can do is now that I have that, I can simply I can continue to drag that over until that is the peak at 0 using this selection tool. And actually I might as well just stay consistent with that, just to keep things simple for you guys. So I am going to scroll all the way to the left. I'm going to pick the time shift tool. I'm going to just keep dragging it over until that peak is at 0 point. And there's that peak. Zoom in a little more so I can see where that peak is. And drag it over. So there's that first peak, and you can see I align that the very top of the peak right to where it's getting cut off of the page. So that is how I have aligned my peak at the exact 0 point. So that's step number one. So I'm going to switch back to the selection tool so I don't accidentally drag this data any further. So I'm going to do that. Then we're going to do a quick little sense check. And to do that, we need to look at the first 1 second of data. So please scroll in or zoom in to a level where you can see between 0 and 1. So you can look at the peaks between those 2 points. And we're actually going to count them. So the purpose of doing this is just a sense check to compare it to the specification of our watch. So I mentioned I'm measuring the Seiko SNK 809. This has a 21,600 beats per hour movement. That is equivalent to 6 beats per second. So I know I should be seeing 6 beats per second. So what do we see in the data here in front of us? So from 0 point, let's count. We have 1, and this is a small one, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see I am achieving that 6 beats per second. And what's the point of doing that? Well, the point of doing that is if I saw that this was at 7 beats per second or 5 beats per second or 3 beats per second, that would tell me there is something terribly wrong with the movement of my watch and regulation is not the right course of action. I need to get it to a professional for repair or basically to diagnose what's happening with that watch. But with this showing me that it's operating correctly with the 6 beats per second, that means I can continue on and check what we have at our 60-second mark. So if we scroll all the way out to 60 seconds, in exactly perfect movement, if we scroll out to 60 seconds, there should be a beat exactly at the 60-second mark because we have zeroed our first beat. So here I am at 1 minute. So what I need to do is look at what is the beat peak and you can see how I zoomed into that data. And you can see here is my peak. You see it? That's the highest point in this area. So if I click on that and I zoom in, this is my peak right there. So what I need to do is look at the difference between this point and my 60-second mark. So I have that. You're going to want to click here at the very peak. So it's that highlights that point. Then you're going to find the 1 minute mark, the 60-second mark. I'm going to hold Control, or if you're a Mac user, you hold Command, and this is your 1 minute mark. So I come down right here, and I click there. And what that did is it highlights all the area between these 2 points. Basically, this tells you this highlighted area is the amount of time that your watch is off from the perfect atomic clock. So I've highlighted this area. Down here at the bottom, you can see it tells you what is that length of time. And what I have here is, this is 0.002 seconds of error. And that's 0.002 seconds over 60 seconds, or 1 minute. So we want to know what is that error equal to over the course of an entire day. And I'm actually going to go to my website, my blog. I have a paper procedure as well. that takes you through all of this. So here, we're on step number 8 to find the watch deviation amount at the 60-second mark and how to calculate and turn this into your seconds per day. So we have our error, and I'll show you this calculation right on screen. So I'll open up the calculator. My error was 0.002 seconds per minute error. So what you're going to do is multiply this times 60 minutes and multiply that times 24 hours. So that tells me my error is 2.88 seconds per day off, which is phenomenal. So this is actually, I'm remaking this procedure after I've regulated my watch. Unfortunately, the beforehand video didn't record properly, so here I am doing this again. So finally I achieved 2.88 seconds of error per day, which is phenomenal. Of course, that's not how it started. I was originally 11.5 seconds off per day, roughly. It was slow. This is 2.88 seconds per day, which I'm going to accept and say that's good for me. But how can you tell if you're running slow or fast? Well, that's easy. So if I zoom back out here in my program, you can see my 60-second peak was over here, which is after the 60-second mark. So that means my beat was slow compared to the atomic clock. And if I'm slow, that means I'm running behind. So my accuracy is 2.88 seconds slow per day. If your 60-second beat of your watch was before the 1 minute mark, your beat is ahead of time. So that means you would be running fast. So in my example, I'm running slow by that 2.88 seconds per day. Originally, but when I started this, I was at 11.5 seconds per day error, and then I ended up at this 2.88. So from this, I'm going to go ahead and replace my backplate O-ring and screw down my backplate to complete my regulation. But I need to show how I achieve this result. So let's head back to the video that details the watch regulation process and shows exactly the steps I performed on my watch to get this result.